No, it's going on now. Okay. All right, there we go. It's about my mobile phone, actually, in that respect. Okay, so good evening, members of the Council, officers of Rother District Council, and members of the public, whether attending in person or watching online. Welcome to this extraordinary full Council meeting of the Rother District Council. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chair. Councillors Clark, Drayson, Field, Hacking, Giawan, Legg and Winter.
Thank you. And members attending remotely tonight, I think it's just Councillor Ganley. And can I just remind you, please, Councillor Ganley, that members attending remotely are unable to move, second or vote on any matter in accordance with our hybrid formal meeting protocol.
Thank you, Chair.
And now we come to agenda item 2, disclosures of interest and dispensations. And there's an important notice about that, namely, members will be aware that the Council's monitoring officer, Linda Walker, has agreed a blanket dispensation for all members to be able to discuss and vote on all matters in connection with the local government reorganisation of East Sussex, as it will impact on us all as Rother District Councillors. There is no need for each member to repeat the dispensation. So are there any other disclosures by members of interest in matters on the agenda? If so, please declare the nature of any such interest under the terms of the Code of Conduct, please. There are none. And are there any other disclosures? Again, there are none. We now come to agenda item 3, the designation of a monitoring officer and solicitor to the Council. Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to move the report of the Chief Executive. Right. I will start again, just so that... I'd like to move the report of the Chief Executive regarding the designation of the Council's monitoring officer and solicitor to the Council be approved and adopted.
Any discussion? Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Having met the successful candidate, I think he will actually fit in very well to Rother. I think we have some very special qualities within our officers and our members within Rother, and I was very impressed with him. And he seems a charming sort of chappie, and I think that he'll be with us, I believe, in June. So I think this is an important part of what we needed within regards to the support that the Chief Executive and our senior leadership team need to have. So I'm sure you'll all meet him and feel, I hope, get the same impression that I did of him.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Now we move to the vote on that. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against? And any abstentions? I declare that motion carried. Now, this is an important matter of business. I have been made aware of a motion to defer consideration of this item of business by members of the Labour Group and to enable members... I'm sorry, this is a mistake by me, my apologies. Can I just go back a little bit, please? I now want to call Councillor Oliver again, this time in connection with local government reorganisation. Councillor Oliver, please.
You're in a rewind? Yes. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Chair and members. I'm very pleased to present the interim plan for local government reorganisation of East Sussex. Following the statutory invitation from the Minister to leaders across the county, we have worked, myself, with other leaders and chief executives, collaboratively to reach an agreement on the proposal for a single unitary authority for East Sussex. Our plan is guided by the principle that council should aim for a population of 500,000 or more and consider existing district boundaries as a foundation for this proposal. There must be a strong justification to deviate from this. While some of us would prefer a smaller population limit, we adhere to the current guidance of the Minister and developed our plan accordingly. Our plan also states that if the government guidance changes, and I think this is an important caveat, that we may revisit these proposals. Despite much speculation, the guidance from the government remains unchanged and was clarified in a communication from MHCLG to the Chief Executive last Friday. We must prioritise our residents. They're important to us, and any options that alter the current boundaries will significantly delay the timetable set by the government. It's not a timetable set by East Sussex, it's the government. We must also consider the uncertainty for our staff, who are our greatest asset. Providing them with clarity regarding the timetable will help retain and recruit to vacancies. A big demand on our officers going forward over these next 2 to 3 years. East Sussex has a long history of strong partnership working. Our focus now should be on designing the new council rather than getting caught up in geography and numbers. It's difficult to see how a configuration that separates adult social care and children's services would be more efficient local government. It is important to note that tonight's decision is not the final one. It's merely a check-in to where we are at this moment in time in order to give the government where we are progressing towards the next stage. I'm very proud of being involved in this process. I find change quite exciting, I always have done. And the progress that has been made within the county and our colleagues within other local authorities. As leader, I could have signed this off, the interim plan, but I felt it was vital for every member of council to have their views known and debate the proposals this evening. We may not have asked for these changes or the pace that it set, which is pretty challenging, but it's what the government directive was, and we should now focus on what really matters, improving outcomes for our residents and businesses. That's our job, that's our responsibility. So let's get on with it and help shape the change rather than having change imposed upon us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I'm under the impression now that at this moment you would wish to make a move in relation to Council Procedure Rules 15.4 and 15.5. Councillor Oliver.
Yes, thank you. I would like to to move that the recommendations contained within the report of the Chief Executive are received and debated. No, I beg your pardon. Yes, I beg your pardon. Yes, I've done that. To move the Council Procedure Rules, I beg your pardon, members, Rules 15.4 and length of speeches and item 15.5, where a member may speak again, be waived for the discussion of this item. Beg your pardon.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I shall now put that motion to the vote. It's a motion purely on the question of the procedural rules at this particular moment. Is there a seconder to that motion, please, Councillor Bayliss? Those in favour of waiving those procedural rules, please show. Thank you very much. And those against waiving them, please show. And any abstentions? I declare that to be carried. Now, it's now a very important procedural point that I need to make. I have been made aware of the motion to defer consideration of the item of business here by members of the Labour group, and to enable members to consider this motion in accordance with the Constitution, this motion will be considered first. I invite Councillor Coleman to speak, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I move to defer this item, and I'd like to explain why. Today we face an important decision. Whilst the proposed single unitary authority may seem convenient, we need to be sure that it is the right path for our communities before we endorse it. Because the truth is, East Sussex is far from one size fits all. And the failings at county level have a lot to do with the area not sharing a homogenous identity. Coastal areas like Bexhill, Rye, Hastings and Eastbourne face very different challenges from inland areas such as Wealdon and the northern parts of Rother. Areas like Sidley and Bexhill are more similar to parts of Hastings and Eastbourne than they are to Robertsbridge or Burwash or northern Rother. These are distinct communities with distinct needs. The question is, can one unitary structure truly meet them all? I believe the answer is unclear, and without fair comparison with all the alternatives, we cannot know for certain. Now, even the minister overseeing this process has warned against this one-size-fits-all approach. Speaking recently, he emphasised that some areas might require, and I quote, a cluster of urban or coastal communities that have a different characteristic. A clear indication that coastal and rural communities may need tailored solutions rather than a single model. He also stressed the value of anchors, clusters of communities that shape the economic and social fabric of an area. Importantly, the Minister also made clear that whilst population sizes of around 500,000 are a guideline, there is flexibility where geography and local needs demand it. And he even acknowledged that some large counties might better suit a model with two smaller authorities, one that reflects urban or coastal communities and one that reflects more rural communities. Similarly, Angela Rayner stated in Parliament that smaller unitary authorities can indeed be considered. Now, I certainly feel that separate coastal and inland unitary authorities would better focus resources to the particular needs of these distinct areas with distinct anchors and distinct demographics. And whilst the interim plan claims to offer flexibility, I think it's too heavily slanted towards a single unitary model. Now, the government's consultation gives us the opportunity to explore and endorse multiple options, and Hastings Council are already doing just that, with 3 different models being considered. We're not bound by this one path, and we shouldn't act like we are. Human beings live naturally in communities. That's what Sir Roger Scruton believed, and actually, surprisingly, I agree. Not on many things, but on that I agree with Sir Roger Scruton. And that's why we must be careful to build something that reflects our real communities, not something artificial or overly centralised. We surely cannot endorse a plan without first considering what the alternatives are. Simply expecting the public to generate their own alternative ideas in a vacuum without the resources to put together a proper plan, that isn't leadership. We have a duty to demand better, to push for a broader view, to use our resources to explore all of our options so that we can make a truly informed decision. We must take time to explore all alternatives thoroughly, rather than rushing into a decision that may not serve our communities in the long term. We have a responsibility to make an informed choice, not just a convenient one. Now, it was the great social reformer David Lloyd George who said that the price of progress is not always easy. And we have to wake up to this now, or the reorganisation process will pass us by and our opportunity to shape the future of our communities will be lost. Progress demands courage, it demands vision. Let's be bold enough to pause, reflect, and choose a future that genuinely serves every community. You can't just sit back and wait for change to happen. You have to make it happen. And that's exactly what we have the chance to do today. We should be taking control of this process. We shouldn't just take the easy road, not when we know that we can do better. We are leaders, not passengers. We are here to do what is right, not what is easy. So let's pause. Let's assess our options, and then, and only then, we can be sure that we are taking the right path. I mean, surely we owe it to our residents to explore what's possible so that we can make an informed and responsible choice. I move to defer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Common. Do I have another speaker on this motion, please? Seconded. Certainly. Yeah. Do I have another speaker on the motion, please? Councillor Bayliss.
I would like to second the motion to defer. We're being asked this evening to make a momentous decision, probably the most important vote for the residents I represent over the last 6 years. I've been a councillor, with possibly the exception of setting up a Bexhill Town Council, which, given where we are now, was prophetic in a way we couldn't have managed or foreseen. I want to start with some positives. Firstly, I want to say that I fully support the devolution agenda and the devolvement of central government decision-making to a local mayor. My colleagues and I fully support strategic decision-making around planning, inward investment, active travel, etc., to a directly elected Sussex mayor. Secondly, we do support the creation of unitary authorities. I wish I had £1 for every time I've had to explain to a resident who does what. Let's face it, residents don't care about the split. They just want a councillor who sorts things out and gets things done. A unitary authority will make life much easier for those that get elected onto the new authority. It's better for residents and better for communities, and has the potential to provide a much more effective, cost-effective services for our council taxpayers. However, getting the geography right is the key driver for making that happen. Unitary authorities, as the Minister points out in his letter, needs to properly represent and address local interests and identities. The plan before you, we believe, doesn't do that. I've undertaken 2 terms of office on Rother, one back in the 1990s and the current term. I felt then, and I feel now, that Rother as a construct is flawed. Rural communities feel that Bexhill gets the lion's share of funding, and in Bexhill we feel that we are subsidising the delivery of geographically diverse services in the rural areas. That tension between urban and rural has not delivered for residents. It's not worked, and the danger we face in voting to endorse the plan before us tonight is that we will be baking in the rural-urban fault line into the proposal going to ministers. There are alternative models we could take a view on, which in my opinion would much better represent those interests and identities I mentioned earlier. I urge you to vote to defer so that we as councillors can consider other options. I know it's tempting to vote for something that's an easy option in terms of implementation and cost, but ask yourself, is this the right option for the people you represent? If you have any doubts, please vote to defer. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Bayliss. And next is Councillor Groan.
Well, representing the people of, what do I have to stand up? Yeah. Representing the people of Southern Rother, I think I would be pulled into all these council towns because I'm not deep into Crowborough and the other areas. So how does that work for us when we are rural and we'll be just, our wagons will be saddled, as it were, and we'll be led off with you lot.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, I have Councillor Timpey, then Councillor Maynard and Councillor Gordon. So next is Councillor Timpey, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just reading the letter from Jim McMahon, and in that it says he will consider any and all proposals. And then you look a bit further up the page, and the deadline is the 21st of March to get in the plans. So I'm asking my colleagues, if we defer, we will be contravening that particular request from the government to get something in by the 21st. My question to you is, do you have your other proposal in a format that this current proposal's in, so that it can be presented alongside? I just need to know, I'm a bit unclear why you would defer when you have a directive to get something in by the 21st and any and all proposals. So perhaps this particular idea that you have for coastal unitaries perhaps maybe should have been brought up a bit sooner so that the Chief Executive can actually respond by the 21st of March. Thank you.
Councillor Timpey. If that's taken as a question in the Constitution, Councillor Corman can give a Thatcher reply. Councillor Corman.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the leader of our group has raised this multiple times in previous leaders' meetings when all of this was being discussed. But nonetheless, there are plans of other options going forward at Brighton, and there are plans going forward tonight at Hastings. And so I have faith in our officers that they will be able to find these plans and draw on them to bring back some different options. But if we have to be late in responding, or if we have to take our name off the interim plan that East Sussex is submitting and then submit something else in writing to the Minister at a later date, then so be it. I'd rather do that than submit the wrong endorsement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Corman. Can I just remind members that this particular facility whereby you can ask questions, have them answered, it's to actually get a factual point cleared up rather than to give the person who is asked an opportunity to state a case. So it's just a factual question. So now we go on to Councillor Maynard, followed by Councillor Gordon, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And it'll probably come as no surprise that we won't be supporting on this side of the chamber any plans to defer. The plans that have been set out thus far, that has taken us as far as this interim report, have been worked up not only in obviously the conversations that have been with government, the clear guidelines that government have made, and let's be absolutely clear about that, the 500,000, the numbers, the absolutely clear indication that unless there is an absolutely exceptional circumstance, that you wouldn't start chopping counties and districts up. The proposals that the Labour Party are clearly advocating this evening, which they've obviously known about for some time, with giving us no evidence about what they're proposing, no evidence of any maps, and I know that they've been asked through you, Chairman. It's amateurish in the very least, but they've been given very clear guidelines from their own government. And here we have, at the last minute, the Labour Party the local Labour Party trying to pull the rug from their own government, which quite frankly, I find extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. But I want to pay tribute, genuinely, the work that's been done thus far here in East Sussex between East Sussex County Council's representatives, both officers and members, and indeed, as the leader of the council here has said, with officers of the respective districts and boroughs, and indeed the leaders of the respective districts and boroughs. There is a huge amount of work to be done. To suggest that there is some historic rural versus urban situation in Rotherham, I think is both factually inaccurate and just frankly rather silly. Because when we look at the whole of East Sussex, you would want to have an area that has a mix of urban and rural. You would want to have an area that has a mix of different businesses and different interests and different those different areas that are unique, that make up our county as things stand. But as I say, there is very little evidence to support what the Labour Party are putting forward at this very late stage. I am astonished that they haven't been more forthcoming with an evidence base to support what they're suggesting this evening, and to support the deferment when the government have been very clear about the timelines would be folly in the extreme, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Now, I've then got Councillor Gordon, Councillor McGurk, Councillor Oliver, and then I've got three more after that. So the next person is Councillor Gordon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as far as the... Good. Start again. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
In the words of Councillor Oliver.
In the words of Councillor Oliver, that's how I feel about life at the moment. And timetable, it's very, limiting. Well, the staff, and I feel it's a tactical move by Labour, and that's how I feel about it. So that's where my vote's going to go.
Thank you. And now Councillor McGurk, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just as regards timing, I think we got the invitation for tonight on the 11th of March. I don't know if it went out before then. So that in itself contributed towards the timeliness of this motion. And as Councillor Coleman explained earlier on, Councillor Bayliss has raised this several times. I believe strongly that local government reorganisation provides an opportunity to change from boundaries that nowadays mean very little to ones that bring people closer together. A proposal to delay decision making at this stage and hopefully transition into a Sussex-wide 5 unitary model, as I understand Brighton and Hove are also advocating, will bring substantial benefits to our coastal communities, including Rye, Winchelsea, Hastings, Bexhill, Eastbourne, potentially beyond. For too long, the area of Rye, Winchelsea and surrounding communities, I believe, have been neglected by the County Council when it comes to essential services. The neglect has led to a disparity in quality of services provided, leaving areas underserved and struggling to meet the needs of residents. And thank goodness for the strong voluntary and community sector we really benefit from in Rye and Winchelsea, which I represent, as well as the outstanding Rye Memorial Hospital and other assets who've had to fill that gap. There's a natural cohesion across coastal communities. We share common challenges, aspirations, and a cultural heritage that binds us together. By reorganising into a coastal unitary council, we can ensure that local governance is more attuned to the specific needs and characteristics of our communities. This model will foster a sense of unity and collaboration, enabling us to address issues more effectively and efficiently. And returning to Minister Jim McMahon's comments, he was very specific, and he, as Councillor Coleman mentioned earlier on, he actually referred to coastal communities, the need for social cohesion, and the absolute acceptability of the lower numbers, as well as higher numbers potentially as well, more than just the 500,000. He recently highlighted the importance of supporting coastal communities, and with a population of around 350,000, our coastal communities fit that profile perfectly. His comments underscore the need for tailored governance structures that can better serve these areas, ensuring the resources are allocated where they are most needed. So one of the critical aspects of reorganising local government is the focus on social care and health budgets, as Councillor Oliver mentioned earlier on. By establishing unitary councils, we can create a more connected and cohesive health and social care system. This is particularly important for underprivileged coastal communities where access to quality health care and social care is currently limited. In a coastal unitary, health inequalities are well documented, and a connected health and social care system under the control of a smaller, more cohesive council would enable us to address those unique challenges faced by our communities. In conclusion, the reorganisation of local government into a 5 unitary council model, or to defer at this stage to consider that model, is not just a matter of administrative efficiency. It's a necessary step towards ensuring that coastal communities receive the attention and resources we deserve. By embracing this model, we can create a more cohesive, responsive and effective governance structure that will benefit all residents of our coastal area of East Sussex, and I ask you please to vote to defer.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Councillor Oliver now, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would just set out again that this timetable set by the government, and I think the comments that have been made here tonight, is actually saying, yes, a unitary is the right vehicle to go forward. We haven't got a choice. It's going to happen. Once we were selected at East Sussex to be part of the devolution priority programme, it was necessary that we got on with it. If you don't get on with it, you get left behind, and that's a concern. And the consequences of deferring will create significant delay, uncertainty for our staff, for recruitment, retention issues. We've got dwindling reserves. We can't afford to wait. We will run out of money in about 2 years, so I'm told, as with Eastbourne and as with Hastings. The funding arrangements are really tight and very severe. This will have a massive impact if we delay and defer, because we will have to catch up with it. And who's going to actually be affected? Our residents, the very residents that we're here to support. Because if we haven't got the resources to carry on with those services, they will suffer as a result of that. Delay detracts from the issues relating to design of this new unitary, which we all feel is the way forward. It's what the government want. So the role of our towns and parishes, they're saying, where do we fit in? By delaying it, we're delaying those very answers to those questions. The other issue that I really get very concerned about, the geography. Why would the coastal strip want to inherit massive debts that occurred with our colleagues in Eastbourne? The comment that I get from there is that we can't wait to be part of a unitary to get rid of our debt, £180 million. And I feel sorry for them because they didn't see COVID coming along. They embarked on a lot of good positive projects, but they got caught out. I don't think it was reckless, like some local authorities, if we start to looking at what's been going on in the general press, be it Spelthorne or Runnymede or Croydon. I felt sorry for Eastbourne, really, because I thought they were trying to bring themselves forward, but COVID took them off by the knees. This is part of the journey. This is part of a journey. This is an interim report that we need to go to government and say, this is where we want to be, and we can actually shape what's happening. This is it's a couple of pages that's going off. When you see what the submission's going to be like in September, it'll be that high. It's got to be a massive document. And if the government don't like it, they'll say we don't like it. It's not our decision as such. Our decision is to support a reorganisation of local government so we go forward in the best possible way. It's not a magic wand that all of a sudden the supply and demand, the supply of funds is going to deal with the demand that we have as a local authority. We are stretched. Our officers are stretched. So I hear what the comments are about deferment. And if we had more time, perhaps it's something that could have bring forward. But my colleagues from the Labour group, sponsored by Brighton went out and started to canvass towns in Lewis district. Would you want to join Brighton? That's an awful behaviour. So as he come to us and said, from Ashford, and said, would Rye and Camber want to be part of us without telling us what's going on? So I think at the end of the day, what we've got to do is to embrace this, as I've said time and time again, is for the benefit of our residents and our staff, and let's move on with it. And therefore, I can't support the deferment, but that's asking for trouble. Let's move forward in a collaborative way as members and shape what's happening so that come the submission in September, we can make it look what we really want to have the benefit of. But to put Sussex into 5 unitaries, we have a wonderful working relationship with East Sussex. We really have. It doesn't happen with our colleagues in West Sussex. They're all over the shop. In fact, some of the members there haven't even debated this, I'm told. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I have now Councillor McCaw, followed by Councillor Barnes, and then Councillor Creases, Byrne and Prochak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief, as my colleagues have already covered a lot of ground. As far as timescales are concerned, to my understanding, this is the start of an iterative process, not the end of it. I don't think we're going to miss out by having careful consideration and stepping back and considering other opportunities. But this meeting tonight has the appearance of democracy, but for me, not the substance of democracy. Democracy implies choice. And there's only one choice on the table tonight, and that is a Tory light East Sussex County Council. No wonder they're supporting it across the room there. It's a gerrymander. We can't accept that. Right. Hastings has 3 choices on the table tonight. Hastings has 3 choices. Why have we only got 1? You know, when I worked in the voluntary sector and jobs came up in Rother, my colleagues used to say, don't bother with Rother. Rother on their sea, they used to derisively call it. It was a byword for conservatism, a backwater dominated by rural conservatives with little progressive thinking. And what was the consequence of that? We had urban pockets of poverty, which remain urban pockets of poverty. Let's not backslide to the antediluvian days of the pre-2019 Rother. Let's grasp the opportunity to consider other models of association in the interest of the communities who have a real synergy along our historic coastal strip. Let's develop some political and strategic vision. Vision is the key word here. There's not an awful lot of it in this paper. Let's not take the easy route, the path of least resistance, and favour an East Sussex County Council Mark II that has failed our residents historically and will continue to fail our residents. I urge colleagues to vote to defer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor McCall, and now Councillor Barnes, followed by Councillor Creaser. Councillor Barnes, please.
I suspect, Chairman, that we've just heard the real reason why this proposal is before us tonight, and it's to do with political control of the authority. Nothing about the residents or the services of the residents. This is about a matter of who is going to be in control of the authority. I confess I don't know. It's a very interesting prospect, which we've been... I first had to do with regional government in the mid-60s, sitting on a Conservative Party policy group chaired by Lord Hailsham, and in the end we decided not to go for regions. Some of the reasons were about city regions were what was being looked at, and not all of us believed that there were city regions in areas like this or in areas like the southwest. The conurbations have now mainly moved under Mayoralties, so the thing has been moving on. What we have in front of us is a very tight timetable. I remind you we're on a fast route, and there are benefits to a fast route, and there are some constraints because there will be penalties, I think, for the Johnny-come-latelys. And that's the Labour government have set this timetable. We knew about it back in November. I am amazed, having heard from Councillor Coleman and Councillor McCord, that we have not got in front of us a proper plan of what that alternative might look like. We're told about coastal authorities. Some people clearly think that extends from Brighton to Rye. Hove presumably is included. Now that's an extremely elongated piece of coast with the odd parish intervening. Those rural parishes will feel totally out of sorts with that sort of shape. And they've invented this tension between urban and rural. There is some, I think, in planning terms particularly, but not in terms of most of our services. Our parishes work very well with Rother, and indeed Bexhill decided they would have a parish of their own, a town council. Look at what functions the new authority is going to have to deal with, because that is why the minimum size has been set. We decided even back in the 1960s that in order to handle social services, you needed large upper tier authorities. To my regret, when the 74 reform was put in place, they took housing away from the larger authority and put it with the smaller authorities. And the result was a separation between two services which should have been in the same unitary authority. Now that was a mistake because we didn't look at the minimal size for functions. You would have got more housing, I suspect, if larger authorities had been funding it. At the end of the day, you also have to consider the whole system, as I found when you try to draw constituency boundaries, you have to consider where the rural areas would go. What's the proposal, not just for a coastal strip, which I'd like to see a map of, but what is the proposal for the rural areas? How are they going to be handled? Are they going to be bundled into Kent in some way? Because they on their own are not sufficient to run social services or children's services. So that's a real problem if you go for this solution. And the practicalities, if you want a smooth transfer of power, are to work with existing boundaries. You don't create something new, because if you do that, the disruption will be enormous. And that's the lesson again from 1974, and indeed from all local government reorganisations. All governments have said, work with your existing boundaries, because otherwise you disrupt relationships. And that's precisely what's being proposed. My last point, Chairman, is look at what happened to health, because I chaired the Primary Care Trust. We were eventually, it was decided there should be a much broader area, a clinical commissioning network, which covers the whole of East Sussex, an integrated care partnership, which covers the whole of East Sussex. Is that an accident? No, I believe it is actually a sensible attempt to suit the functions and the size of the bodies concerned to the interests and the best interests of our residents. I think to defer now would not actually be serving the interests of our residents at all.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Next is Councillor Creaser, followed by Councillor Byrne, followed by Councillor Prochak. So, Councillor Creaser, please.
I withdraw my application to speak.
Certainly, in which case, Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. We're talking about deferring specifically here, whereas we've actually been debating the size and shape of future authorities, as if this is where it has to be done. If we look carefully at what we're being asked to endorse, it says, given current government guidelines, we submit an interim plan working towards proposals for a single unitary, subject to further development of the evidence base and any change in population criteria and public consultation. It goes on to say, we do remain open at this point to alternative options should the government indicate flexibility. Now, it's not inconceivable that should a Labour group rather put forward a workable and considerable alternative to the Labour government, it's not inconceivable that they wouldn't look at this, especially if it has all the advantages that we're being told it has. I haven't had time to fully examine the implications of a coastal strip, and I don't think any of us have here. It was rather sprung upon us. So I'll read again. We do remain open at this point to alternative options should the government indicate flexibility in the current criteria, or if residents demonstrate a clear desire for us to consider an alternative. So I don't think we're being dragged down a narrow path. I think we're being asked to indicate that we will constructively go forward within those criteria, which aren't set, saying we will constructively go forward, bearing in mind that you will listen to alternatives, you will look at public consultation. And remember, this is national. This is not just a coastal strip in Rother. What's left? What are the other authorities doing? What are the other regions in United Kingdom going to, in England, going to tell the government? So it may be a complete rethink. But at the moment, and I endorse Councillor Oliver's point here, if we just defer, we're deferring a decision to go somewhere that isn't fully yet fleshed out. Why would we do that? All we're doing is getting in the way. There's an initial proposal. It seems to make a lot of sense. There's now an alternative proposal, not fully worked up yet, but nothing's ruled out. But deferring rules out progress of any sort whatsoever towards any sort of solution. So I really don't think deferment is a good idea, and I would recommend for my Labour colleagues to read paragraphs 3 and 4 of Appendix B again and see whether they really feel that this is limiting them and is ruling out what might be very good ideas. But please don't just defer for the sake of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, it's Councillor Prochat, please, and then Councillor Timpe.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, for allowing this debate, because it's not going to make a difference in terms of decision making, but it is very good that we've been having the debate, and thank you to the Labour group also for putting their motion on the table. And thank you, Councillor Byrne, for putting us on the straight and narrow and reminding us what we're voting on. Certainly, sorry, Leader, I cannot embrace this change in the way you say we should embrace. I am totally, totally against the way the Labour government have done this, the speed they've done it, the dictatorial way they've done it, and removing democracy and accountability. And I would like to say further things when we get to the main motion. As a Liberal Democrat, our view is that the best decisions are made closest to those people who are affected. And so I have great sympathy and agreement with many of the things, Councillor Coleman, you have said. Having said that, I think we should be looking at ways to make a unitary work. There is a feeling that the county doesn't work at the moment, and I shall give you a wonderful example later of how the county doesn't work at the moment. And I think we should really look, as our Chief Executive said, at the operational way a unitary should work. But I want to say that I won't support deferment. We can model later, because we need to be concentrating on the operational side of things, how it's going to work. But I can remember as well, and I've got a good memory, Councillor Barnes, when we did the last reorganisation. And it was there that our proposal was that we have a Wealden rural, and then a coastal strip. Can I just say that Bexhill, proposing that Bexhill join with Hastings, is the one time when I've seen Bexhill residents get up on their hind legs and say no. So I think I don't think maybe things have changed that much, but there are so many differences along the coastal strip. I can see the attraction of it, but chalk and cheese, Bexhill and Hastings. So that's just the one thing I wanted to say, and that we won't be voting for a deferral.
Thank you, Chair. It's really interesting to see everybody's point of view. I'd just like to know procedurally, can my colleagues bring to us their proposal for us to look at while we send in this other one? And you could put a caveat in your letter. This is our first proposal. There is a second option coming. Is that possible? Because it seems to me that deferment is not going to pass, from what I've heard. But we need to address the fact that, and I go back to Councillor McCourt's point, democracy is about choice, and we just have the one option in front of us. And I know why, and fast track and whatever. But I think we do need to be fair and allow whatever option our colleagues are proposing, that it gets aired and it gets looked at. Because if it doesn't, then we're simply dismissing something that we don't actually know all the detail of, and I'm not comfortable with that at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Timpe. I think I'm going to ask Lorna Thorpe, because that's basically a question of administration. So I'm going to ask whether Lorna could give us a reply on that one, please.
Thank you for that, Chair. Well, first of all, the interim plan makes really, really clear that particularly if those guidelines change, and as Councillor Oliver said on Friday last week, it was reiterated the criteria that we're to apply here. If that changes, then we will look at other options. But I think as part of the business case that we have to put together, part of that will be to understand the implications of any other proposals that come forward. So actually, the business case, as Councillor Oliver said, will be very, very thick, and it will consider what those alternatives might be and how it would work. So that analysis has not yet been undertaken, as I'm aware, I don't know if it has within the Labour group, but the amount of data and analysis and financial modelling that needs to be done to understand the implications of different options is part of putting forward the right option and the one that we all finally agree on, which is when the decision is made in September. And I just reiterate that this is an interim plan, and I think the words that Councillor Byrne actually cited there is absolutely accurate and a reflection of where we are in this process. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Lorna. Your question in relation to the procedure at this meeting, if this particular motion is rejected, we would then go on to discuss the substantive motion on the order paper. And if we did that, it would be open to anybody, any member, to put forward an amendment to that motion, although it would have to be crafted with great care to ensure that it wouldn't effectively be a way of rejecting that motion, because obviously motions that do that are inadmissible. So it would have to be very, very carefully written to be allowable. Okay? I hope that explains the kind of the procedural issue so far as this meeting is concerned. Okay. Any more speakers? You have the right to reply. Yes. Councillor Coleman, you can now exercise your right to reply to the debate.
Yes, well, I'd just like to wrap up as well, as the procedural rules have been moved as well. I think there's been a lot of discussion here, and we were very clear bringing this forward, having tried to get an agenda this evening that would have considered multiple options. And there are maps, there are details, in actually far greater detail than is needed for this interim stage, that we would have been happy to provide. And those are going to other councils in Sussex as we speak. But we have just been given this one option on this agenda. And all we are asking for, we're not saying you have to agree with our views on this coastal inland two-unitary system for East Sussex. We're aware that there's going to be lots more discussion needed on that. And we want to be able to have that discussion with the evidence in front of us, with the detail that we have for the other option, for the East Sussex County Council 2.0 scheme. We have to have the evidence in front of us so that we can make an informed decision. That's why we felt compelled to ask for deferment, so that we can all consider those options. If, at the end of that discussion, after we have seen these two options that seem to be the main options coming forward, then of course, if this council chooses to back the scheme that East Sussex County Council has drafted for this interim plan and has asked all of the councils underneath it to sign off on, if we still agree with that plan, then we can go forward with it. But I ask councillors this. If I was going to give you a map of Sussex today, or even just a map of the East Sussex area, and I said to you, draw your perfect council, would you draw East Sussex County Council? Has East Sussex County Council worked? Adult social care was mentioned. We've just seen the horrendous cuts that have just come from the adult social care department at East Sussex County Council, completely detached from the needs of the most vulnerable in our communities. Who identifies with East Sussex as an identity? Do you, when people say, where are you from, and they're not from out here, do you say, I'm from East Sussex?
Can I just ask members, please, to make sure that Councillor Coleman has the floor and only he is speaking. Thank you.
Obviously, my first identity is as a resident of Sidley, of course. But if I'm talking to someone from out of area, I say, I live on the Sussex coast, or I live in Sussex. And that's why I think devolution and a Sussex mayor is important. Or I say I live near Hastings, or in between Hastings and Eastbourne, or in between Hastings and Brighton. I don't say I'm from East Sussex. To me, that doesn't represent any particular anchor or community, the things that are talked about by the Minister in their proposals. And the Minister has been flexible, very clearly flexible. If you read all of the speeches that the Minister has given, it is very clear that they are open to considering different options. They've mentioned specifically coastal and inland areas as a potential for these alternative schemes. And we want the ability to present those to you. That is all we're asking, is for the ability to present our argument in a full way with evidence that's not just drummed up from members, but actually has a similar weighting to this East Sussex County Council drafted plan. Because this plan is going to go forward, whether we endorse it or not. East Sussex County Council are going to submit this interim plan with whatever district and borough councils agree to it, whether we agree to it or not. We're just being asked to sign off on it. So if we don't sign off on it, it will still go forward. This plan will still be considered. But then maybe we have an opportunity then to actually make our voice heard as a district council about what our views are, instead of just signing up to East Sussex County Council's scheme, which, yes, this is the very early stages. But once this is signed off, that sets us on a path. That sends staff at East Sussex up on a path to prepare this long document of evidence base to support East Sussex County Council 2.0. Now is the time, if we are going to have any divergence from that, even if it is just the case that we amend the interim plan to say that we would consider a coastal unitary split, a coastal inland split. If we want to do that, that would be great. But this plan as it stands is one option, and this is not a debate, this is not true democracy. We have been asked to sign off on the singular option that is presented to us, and we, as Democrats, ultimately, in the Labour Party, can't stand and do that. I don't want to just sign off on something when there is so much at stake. When my residents in Sidley have been failed time and time again by East Sussex County Council, by the fact that whenever Rother is applying for funding, whenever there is funding for disadvantaged communities, something that the new government has said very clearly that they want to target their funding towards, Hastings get that funding because they can clearly demonstrate the deprivation in their communities. East will even sometimes get that funding because they can do the same. We can't, because whenever Rother tries to apply for these sorts of fundings and these sorts of grants, we have too much of a diverse population. Those disadvantaged communities feel subdued and feel underrepresented. And if we were to build a council model, ambitious though it may be, that actually represented those communities, we could better serve their interests. Councillor Maynard, you can tell me to sit down if you want, but I want to get across my points.
Sorry, can I just ask members, please, not to have these sort of cross discussions. Councillor Coleman has the floor. Please, when you were speaking, Councillor Coleman listened attentively, and now it is his turn.
I didn't tell Councillor Coleman to sit down. You've misinterpreted.
Could you please not interrupt me? Could you please not interrupt me when I'm talking? Thank you. Sorry, can I just say, Councillor Maynard, that I don't appreciate that. I said very clearly, in order to make sure that Councillor Coleman had the floor, asked you please not to interrupt him. That is a very reasonable request. So I hope we've now established the point. Councillor Coleman is summing up. He will be the last speaker in this particular part of the debate, and because we decided that there's not going to be a time limit, Councillor Coleman can choose himself when he wishes to stop. Councillor Coleman, please.
I definitely won't be filibustering, Chair, so don't worry about that. I just want to make this final point, and I think it is important to make this. We have a choice now to be passengers on East Sussex County Council's bus towards East Sussex County Council 2, or we have a chance to have our voices heard and consider other options. I move to defer, Chair, and I hope that colleagues from across this chamber will be able to support me in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. We will now move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. And those against, please show. And any abstentions, please? There's the one there. Right. I declare the motion to be defeated. Now, at this point, Councillor Oliver, because we have decided against deferment, I believe you will have a further motion to put to this Assembly. So if you'd like to move the recommendations contained within the report of the Chief Executive, that those ideas be received, debated and voted on.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to move that recommendations contained in the report within the report of the Chief Executive be received, debated and voted thereon. I would like to add one point, and I appreciate my colleague Sam Coleman's comments that there were several inaccuracies there, and that's really what makes me very, very upset. This is not an East Sussex proposal. It's been crafted by all the groups, all the local authorities have been involved in putting this forward. I'm afraid they have, Sam. Don't wave your head and say they haven't. I assure you they have. So it is not being put forward by East Sussex alone. As a Tier 1, they were invited to deal with this process, and it has been involved with every local authority in East Sussex. And at the end of this process, if we get to where we intend to be, East Sussex will disappear, and a new unitary will be elected, of which every one of you here could stand as an election in the new unitary. You can therefore look to shape and embrace, because you do need to embrace change. But you can get involved with it by standing for election, and that will happen within a very short period of time. But in the meantime, Rother have got to survive, and that's going to be really tough. So I applaud your comments. There was a lot of inaccuracies there, I'm afraid. Anyway, sorry, what am I doing? I'm just letting... we wonder. Yes, that wasn't kind.
So basically, you've moved the recommendation.
So I'd like to move the
Yes,
recommendation.
indeed.
I did need to make that.
Indeed. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Killeen has seconded, and now we move to the debate. Do I have a speaker on the motion, please? Councillor Prochak.
Are you going to allow me a rant?
I believe that's de rigueur this evening.
As I said, embracing is different from getting involved and working towards it. Did you read it in the Labour manifesto that this was going to happen? And if we actually wanted to fix local government, we would not do this. We would sort out the finances, the funding, because that's going to be the biggest problem for a unitary, which whatever shape it is the financing. And the example I wanted to give you about unitaries, that unitaries are too big. We know from our housing associations, big is not good. We know from other things that big is not good. The thing is, as well, is the existing county, and it's very difficult to keep it separate, the existing county and what may be, is that there are contracts in place. And I think the example was given that we don't care who does what, we just want it done. However, it's the operational side that has got the devil in the detail. And so if I say, which I have done recently to county, we've got trip hazards in our lovely brick pavements in Robertsbridge, could you come and have a look and fix it? They'll say, well, no, we can't, because you haven't got a conservation area. Excuse me, we are in a conservation area, here's the evidence. One thing, they didn't know that. Second thing, so they say, no, we can't come out and do that, repair them, and even though you're in a conservation area and the brick paving is historically really valuable, we can't do that, we'll just have to come in and fill it with blacktop. And so they had a long letter explaining why blacktop is so much cheaper than putting the brick paving right. So what's the problem then? Money. They haven't got the money. And will the unitary have the money to do it, to keep our public realm at a level that we'd like to have our public realm? And insult to injury, having sent this letter saying they would fill it with blacktop, was saying, thank you for your inquiry, your case is now closed. Oh, so the next thing you do, if your case is closed, is you go to your elected representative. So in a bigger authority, you may have one or two. Are they going to be the campaigners to actually say to officers, this is not right, what are we going to do about it? Because what happens in county, I have found, and I know my county colleagues may disagree, I have found that they go along with the officers. And so you need a real campaigning person who knows the area, bigger area, who knows the policies. And so we come to the ridiculous situation where you have the quote was, if you've got a drain that's blocked in the highway, if it's got a tree growing out of it, the county can do it. If it's got leaves blocking it, Rother have to do it. But the thing is, it's not county and Rother, it's their policies and their contracts. So the man is standing there saying, can't unblock that drain because it's leaves. And it's not him that's saying that. It's not his boss that's saying that. It's the contract that they've drawn up saying that. So this is what I'd like to concentrate on when we're talking about unitaries. I'd like to concentrate on how they can operate better. We had a strategic level partnership, it was brilliant. Police, fire, everybody came together, senior people. That just fell away. So somehow or other, we've really got to focus on how can we make a unitary work for our residents. I remember there was Battle Rural. That might be a good idea if we could have those clusters of councils somehow or other, and to keep Rother's identity, because that's where the identity is. And you're right, people don't say I live in Rother, they say I live near Hastings usually. But we've got so many things built in, knitted into us, that's Rother identity. And as much as I really, really am against this whole change, the other thing I don't think is going to work is planning. So if this government want to get houses built, they've chosen the wrong way to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Projak. Councillor Kirby-Green, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do agree with a lot of Councillor Projak's comments. First of all, I would say I live in East Sussex. I think it's really interesting because if you genuinely don't, if I'm asked, I would say I live in East Sussex. Because otherwise, what do I say? I live near Wadhurst or near Tunbridge Wells? I don't know. And I would say that I've got, looking at Westfield, for instance, I would say Westfield would say they've got a lot more in common with Bexhill than they have with Forest Row. So the problem is when you've got a geography as big as East Sussex, or maybe Councillor Cooper disagrees, but if you've got a geography as big as East Sussex, you're never going to align with every bit of it. Do you know what I mean? So it's so big. So I wouldn't set, so I feel that East Sussex is the right geography from where I live. I think a lot of your comments about East Sussex is because it's led or, minority led by the Conservatives. That doesn't mean it's going to be that moving forward. So there's all these comments about East Sussex and this, that and the other, but you shouldn't be blaming East Sussex geography because of who's actually running the administration at the moment. So I think people have to sort of separate the two. I do take exception to Councillor Projak. I am the bane of officers' lives at East Sussex. Absolutely, I think John will agree with me. Absolutely, I call them out. I'm very unhappy about a lot of things at East Sussex, highways. Absolutely agree with you regards contracts, all that sort of thing. I'd like to tell you that I am having brick paving laid in Belwich High Street. So they shouldn't be laying, if it's a conservation area, they're even checking the bricks that we're using to check that they match the conservation area. So why they're laying black concrete or tarmac, I have absolutely no idea. But you need to get your county councillor involved. But no, absolutely. Yes. So yeah, I would like to take exception to that. And I think that it is up to your council, and I think that's what councillors should be doing. And I think we should be challenging, certainly challenging officers. And in my view, absolutely I do that. And I think that if anyone's elected to the new unitary authority, that's what they should be doing.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Green. I've now got Councillor Stanger, Councillor Barnes and Councillor Oliver in that order.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm quite new to this, just trying to see where I'm at the moment. We didn't choose to be here. We've been taken where we are, and we need to make the best out of a bad situation. This is my opinion. The funding, the homelessness, the social care, the child social services are all desperately underfunded, and there's no point blaming councils. It's just a general problem. And is it going to be fixed by a unitary council? Probably not, because the funding looks quite even balanced, and it's going to cost a lot of money to implement. I'm just where I am. I think we've got to make the best out of a bad situation and try to do the best for our residents. And whatever way we get there, I think that's the way we are.
Thank you, Councillor Stanger. Councillor Barnes is next.
Yes, Chairman, let me begin by agreeing with Councillor Projak on one thing. And the key to this, and I think the one weakness in this document, is that it doesn't really say to the government in terms that you need to reform local government finance. Because without that, this reform is going to fail, and indeed local government is failing, because government after government, under the influence of the Treasury, has cut grants to local government, but they have not actually supplied an adequate revenue base to local government. So thus far, I totally go with Councillor Prochak. We urgently need a new Layfield. It is half a century since Layfield, and we need somebody now to really look at how you fund these new unitary authorities. Otherwise, they won't solve the problem. But actually clinging to the present will solve the problem. It won't, because you do need certain services at scale. And above all, you do need both your commissioning of health and your social care to be at a scale where they can do the job effectively, working with the local hospitals. We need a better social care system. The minimum size for that, and there is a lot of evidence for this, is about 500,000. That's the figure that academics would put on it. From there, I also derive the point that I think the mistake back in '74 was to separate housing from social care. And I see Councillor McCourt agrees with me. But if you have a minimum size to the social service authority of 500,000, then clearly you are on the unitary track. I do agree that unitaries have a very mixed record. I know Cornwall quite well, I know Wiltshire quite well. I think Cornwall works rather better than Wiltshire. But there are lessons to be learned, and I do agree again with Councillor Prochak that what we need to work out is how we strengthen the local voice in the unitaries. And the area, again, which has been singularly unaddressed by this government is the role of parish and town councils. Do they need a new competence? Will they continue to be funded by the community levy that we have at the moment? Or will there be charging, or what will be that funding system? There are numerous questions too about electoral size which are addressed. I think between 4,000 and 5,000 is about right per councillor. Whether you achieve that by smaller wards or by 2 members in larger wards, I think is open to discussion. But it seems to me that unless we get the finance right, this reform is going to be just another botch-up. And I think we do need to say that very clearly back to the government, because they haven't really thought the funding through.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. I think it's fair to say, judging by the number of appreciative nods in the entire room, that we all agree that it's imperative that local government be properly financed. I think I speak to you all in reinforcing that message. And now, Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I think that the points that have been raised here this evening with regard to funding is important. But shaping is where we embrace, again, I'll use that word, our towns and parishes. There are things called area committees that work up and down the country. So you'll get a grouping of smaller towns and parishes that would work together. And if we're not involved in this, we won't be able to put the case for rather forward, saying that we have 32 towns and parishes of this sort of size. We want their voice heard. Our colleagues at Eastbourne and Hastings are not parished. They've got a lot of work to do before they get to a point when they can start representing some of the local issues. So it is very important. And bearing in mind, there are 62 unitaries up and down the country at the moment, and we will learn from some of the issues that have not worked particularly well, but those that have worked well. And North Yorkshire is one that has continued. There are also district councils carrying on there to deal with the local issues. We're not going to shut up shop one night and say, well, that's it, there's a phone number for a unitary, wherever they might be. So I think, we've just got to be very, very sensible about this as to what we want to achieve. And we've got to put our residents in the middle of all of that, and our staff, because they will be supporting our residents along this journey. It is exciting because change is there. And as Councillor Stanger said, It's forced on us. We've got to deal with it. You can't just sit back on the subs bench and sort it out later on. Play the game, get in there, and let's see where we can take it for all the right reasons. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. And next is Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Let me start by just putting into context what I was actually doing earlier on, which was when I went like that, I was implying that a coastal authority might see the poor get poorer. And I think I want to caveat that by saying now that I think genuinely when we talk about optimism about any unitary authority, that of course we want to see the very best for the residents, whether it's the combined authority, whether it's East Sussex, whether it's the area we previously knew as Rother, whether it's our own parishes and towns, because we owe it to our residents to try and absolutely embed that culture of aspiration. We need to make sure that we've got the very best education for our children. We need to make sure that we've got the very best care, both in terms of healthcare and in terms of in particular, focus on later life, because the geography of our particular county as things stand with our ageing population means that those challenges around adult social care are even greater here than they are elsewhere in the country. And the reality is, and let's be perfectly blunt, I mean, I'm one of those people that will gladly commend somebody if they have a good idea, whether or not it's come from a Liberal Democrat, Labour, Conservative, Green or Independent. And the reality is that nationally, parties haven't had a particularly good record of actually recognising and drilling down on the really difficult issues around adult social care. And I know we've got the dispensation, but I think it's right and proper that obviously I acknowledge the fact that I hold that portfolio at county at the moment. But the reality is that when Theresa May went to the public and actually said we need to do something, she got quite a muted, and I think the polite word to say would be quite a muted response. So I agree with Councillor Oliver, we have to have that cautious optimism going forward. But I also agree with Councillor Stanger and Councillor Prochak that we have to absolutely press government that the big ticket items, like the problems in finance within children's services and adult social care, have to be addressed. We cannot have this unitary programme, local government reorganisation programme, having any sort of smokescreen over the responsibilities that central government have. I think there are genuine opportunities, but there are also genuine concerns. And let me be really clear. Only by working in a collegiate way, which Councillor Oliver has adequately outlined in a very well this evening, only by working in a collegiate way will we achieve those aspirations. And I think it's beholden upon all of us to try and inform our residents as much as we possibly can when we go and talk to residents, but as obviously the respective councils do as well through our communication channels, whether it's social media, but for a lot of us it's those parish councils, but it's about keeping residents informed. Because I think from a resident perspective, when they actually go to their councillor and they don't have to think, well, hold on a minute, is that Rother or is that East Sussex? I think that's actually a tangible benefit for residents. But I think also we have to be honest with residents about some of our concerns as well. And I'd say, and it's rare for me to do so, but I will certainly agree with Councillor Prochak that one of my particular worries is around planning. Because we've seen the housing numbers that the government are pushing forward. And when I first got elected, I can remember writing, back in 1999, my own personal manifesto. And protecting the OMB was at the very cornerstone of that. And aside from all the political business that we talk about, and when I say political, I mean big P, the reality is your political legacy as a local member is whether you've done a good job for local people in terms of planning, whether you're for or against a particular proposal, because that is your legacy as a local member. And I do fundamentally believe that making sure that we protect our AOMB has to be there for all of us as we go forward in this. It's going to be a difficult process, but as I say, that collegiate approach, I think it's beholden upon us all. Even if the Labour group today don't get their way, we end up with a East Sussex unitary, that we work together to try and make that the very best East Sussex unitary, because it's not East Sussex 2, This will be a new authority, and it is somewhat misleading, maybe a little disingenuous, to suggest it's just East Sussex County Council by any other name, because it is not. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor Osborne, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As it took me the best part of an hour to get here, I thought I'd better stand up and say something. If any new authority can sort out the current road situation and the temporary traffic lights and the bypasses closed and everything else and the potholes, then I'm all for it. And where can I sign up and vote for it? But going back to this, this change has been put upon us by the government. Timescales are tight. We've got to have this. This has got to be voted on, this resolution, by this evening, because it's got to be into government by Friday. It says interim, the interim plan proposed. That's what it says. And my argument here is, we as an authority are disappearing, but we as members are not disappearing for probably another 3 years. And we have got probably 18 months, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years to make sure that this new authority works for our own individual areas. We know our areas better than most people. So we have to ensure that the plan for this new authority covers what we want it to. And then we can disappear off and I can ride my bike as many times as I like. So, my concern is, will they know that Winchelsea Beach doesn't have lifeguards, but Camber Beach does have lifeguards? Winchelsea Beach has a few people turn up on a sunny Saturday. Camber gets a total influx of 25,000 people and 4,000 cars, and most of them are in a bad mood. So, this is the things that will need to be sorted out by the new authority, from our point of view, from any member across the whole of Rother dealing with their own patch. We have got to make sure that whatever replaces East Sussex County Council, and that's what it's doing, as Councillor Maynard says, East Sussex County Council is being replaced with this new authority, and we as members now, and those in Wealdon and Hastings and Eastbourne and everywhere else, have got to make sure that the new authority looks after their own patch to a better standard. I could argue to a better standard than what is done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. And now it's Councillor McGurk and then Councillor Creaser, please. Councillor Burton.
Thanks, Chair. 2 points. Whatever happens, whatever comes out of this debate and wherever we end up in the future, the Labour Group and the Labour Party will continue to work hard for our local communities, and that's should be a given. That's absolutely what we will continue to do, and it's what we do. We engage with our local residents, and that's what this is all about for me, anyway. And the second thing is just a point about health and social care. So the numbers in terms of social care absolutely matter, but I think it's very difficult to put a number on it. There are places like South Tyneside with a population of just under 200,000, which is effectively a unitary, have great adult social care. There are places like Bracknell Forest. I was working there a few years ago. Again, great adult social care, about to be inspected. They do a great job with a similar population. There are other ways of distributing funding and redistributing funding for social care and obviously especially health. And there are pooled budgets, things like the Better Care Fund, which are used for hospital discharge effectively. Locally, we've got some great hospital discharge in East Sussex. They do a really good job, they perform very well. But the point I was trying to make earlier on was that there are areas of East Sussex which I believe, and I know it would be neglected, in terms of statutory services, and there are organisations like Rye Memorial Hospital, which isn't a part of the NHS. It's an independent hospital which provides absolutely amazing services for our local community. And Barry Nealon, who's the director, has been similarly behind Rye Pool, recently becoming, moving on from Rother and becoming independent. So that some of those individuals who put their time and energy into ensuring those key local assets have continued are really have filled a gap that the NHS and adult social care have left. And I know, I'm not going to say better than anyone, but I know very well how successive governments have failed social care and health, and the way that statutory services have had to be flexible, fleet of foot, really responsive to local need, and think hard about how do we engage and meet local need. There's nothing that makes me more mad than when people talk about the flabby flabby statutory sector, local government, because there is nothing, I don't think there are many businesses that can compete with social care and health, particularly about how to really grapple and understand and find new ways of meeting local needs. So that's really important to me. And I don't think numbers are as important as we have heard this evening so far. There are ways of sharing budgets, pooling funds, and working effectively to meet local need, and at a much better local level. And just one, for instance, before I end, there are models that really engage pre-social care, things like local area coordination, community brokerage, that are amazing at reducing local need, delaying people coming to social care. Social prescribing is a similar version, something similar, on a more of a medical model. That there are ways of managing need and supporting local people closer to home, closer to communities that are really meaningful and harness all that wonder, those amazing communities, faith communities who do so much, local interest communities, things like community gardens. Those are the real heroes that in our communities that have meant that, sometimes we're masking what social care and health aren't managing to achieve with the best will in the world. No criticism at all of colleagues in social care and health. But I believe smaller unitary would be capable of better meeting local need and understanding local need in a way that a large unitary like an East Sussex model would not be able to.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. Councillor Creaser, please.
As one of only two rural Rother Labour members, I've got a slightly different view. The bigger picture and all the government stuff, that's fantastic, but there are so little reference at the moment to the parish and town councils that currently exist. Rye Town Council has been in existence for hundreds of years. We've got a lot of councillors and we can't change it unless there's an Act of Parliament, because it was given to us by Queen Elizabeth I, so it was a long time ago. And to be perfectly honest with you, I am quite concerned that we make sure that we are starting to be more considered, because the parish councils do work very hard, we do make a difference, and because we are part of the community, we are able to do things on the bottom level that our more high-flying colleagues can do strategically. I do understand the strategic things, and I do obviously that kind of thing. But I think we need to have an eye on the residents, and we need to have a closer eye, and be involved with them. And, obviously the real important stuff, but we need to make sure that particular facility, which all of us in the rural areas particularly depend on, is part of that process. And it is that where the leadership comes from in the communities, the parish and town councils. And they will coordinate, and they will support, and they will help the people that are doing all these amazing things voluntarily out of their own pockets most of the time, and they work like Trojans. And I have worked with people like that since I've lived here in Rye, well not here because this is Bexhill, but in Rye for the last nearly 30 years. And prior to that, when I lived in one of the villages, I joined in there as well. It's part of the thing. So I think being a member of a community, having the ability to do those things, having a vehicle that we can continue to rely on and to support us doing those things, because even if I'm not a councillor, I will still work in my community because it's important. And I think that the town and parish councils need to have a bigger say, and they need to be more aware and become more of the main thing in terms of what's going to happen. Because yes, the district council is going to go. I've worked very hard since I became a district councillor to engage and to get the people in Rye to consider themselves as part and parcel of the Rother family. And I've convinced most of them, the ones that talk to me anyway, that it is a really useful thing. Because a lot of people think it's a distance away, they don't care. And of course they do care, we all care. But we care in different ways, but we still care. And then if we can take that back to the parishes, and what we need to do is to bring that forward as a legacy, so when we end up with whatever unitary we are having, is that they still are able to engage with the small communities. I don't really know how they're going to make that happen, but there will be potentially, as someone suggested earlier, groups of parishes having a hub situation. I don't really mind what they do as long as people still have a voice, because that's my thing, is the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Creaser. And now Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I have two main points. One, I want to continue the issue of the tarmac and black tarmac being put down, in that this also happened in Battle outside the Abbey, where the tarmac is red, and it was filled with black because it was cheaper. And we've talked a little bit, and so then the town council complained and discussed it. But we've talked about relationships and working with officers. And I go back to the point that's been made a number of times. The reason why the officer says, no, we want to put down black is because of the finances. Yeah. They would do it if they could. And that's all about the finances and working together, not for a common goal. I'm sure the person at the end of the phone knew what we wanted in Battle. It was all about what they were not able to do. And my second point, I'm picking up points about from my colleagues about the town councils. And when I hear in conversation in this chamber, Battle is talked about in relation to being fairly well developed. We've had facilities passed to us, assets passed to us many moons ago, for example, the Rec, if you know it, on the High Street. So we're fairly established. And what happens is that town council is doing a huge amount of work, but they're not recognised because they're put on a par with a little town council with no premises, no buildings, and a clerk who does 4 hours a week. It's just, they're not comparable, and that needs to be highlighted. So I would say that the interim plan needs to have more on it at this very stage to do with what the town and parishes councils will do. Our election date should be on there. At the moment, it's 2027. That needs to be considered when you're looking forward to how this will work together. And as Councillor Barnes said, it's about finances, it's about responsibilities, and being creative, because don't forget our residents will come to, as they are already in Battle, we're lucky, we're a small community, they go to one of the three of us and we get things done. But those councillors are going to sit round a table with 199 other councillors. So they're a long way away for real responses. That's why the parishes are so important, that they can go to the parish and get answers to more questions, more things done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. Are there any other speakers on this motion? If not, I'll call upon Councillor Oliver to sum up. Councillor Oliver, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think there's been some discussion this evening about shaping it. What's it going to look like? And our towns and parishes, of which there are 32 in Rother, need to be consulted on all of this, and this is something which I know officers will be doing, going forward with devolving our facilities, assets and services. and it will become clearer. And I think that the very comments that we've made tonight will be noted so that we can actually feed into the next submission in September exactly what it means for our rural communities within Rother. That's very, very important. I think it's shown again tonight that, you know, we care. I think there's been some good, passionate comments. Don't let's have a divide of politics on this. We may not agree with certain things, but let's really work together. That gives us an awful lot of satisfaction, I suppose, when we achieve things at the end of it all, and that we've actually used the experiences from all the members here. And there's an awful lot of experience here. You can tell that with the quality of the speeches that are made this evening. And you will all have a chance to be part of a unitary, if it gets that far, if it all happens, unless there's a change, we don't know. But let's assume it is. And you will all have an opportunity of representing your residents on a newly formed unitary council. Should it be East Sussex, or should it change? You know, let's keep an open mind on it all, but let's keep working together so that we can be involved. And this very word shaping has been used many occasions. If you're not in there, having making your contribution, you're on the sidelines. So thank you, Chair, and thank you all members this evening. I think we've made a lot of progress as to where we are going.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I hope that any member of the public that's actually witnessed the debate tonight would have been impressed by the way in which you discussed not merely the structural issues, the geographical issues and so on, but also the way in which you'd actually opened up the debate to the wider and deeper issues, and also the way in which you brought into the debate the local and human aspect. So I hope members of the public will notice that. And I'd just like to thank members myself for the quality of the debate this evening. We will now move to the vote. Councillor Bayliss, please. Yes, I'll need to see 3 other people. Thought I had the thought. So we now move to recorded vote. Can I ask Lisa Cooper to take over the organisation of that, please? Thank you. Just say that because all the recommendations hold together as one, I'm taking a vote on the entire recommendation.
Thank you, members. I shall read out your names in alphabetical order. Please answer clearly for, against or abstain. John Barnes. For. Mrs Barnes. For. Bayliss. Against. Biggs. For. Burton. Byrne. Chowdhury. Against. Coleman.
Against.
Mrs Cook. For. Cooper. Against. Creaser.
Against.
Delaney. Against. Gordon. For. Gray. For. Groner. For. Killeen. Kirby Green. Maynard. McCourt.
Against.
McGurk. Mear.
For.
Oliver.
For.
Osborne. Pearce.
For.
Proshak. For. Rathbone Ariel.
For.
Stanger.
For.
Thomas.
For.
Tempe. For.
Hayward.
Excuse me, Chair, you missed one. Councillor Hayward.
Apologies. Councillor Hayward.
The result of the vote was 22 for and 8 against, so I declare the motion carried. Thank you again to all members. As that concludes the business for this extraordinary meeting, I now declare the meeting closed at 7:42. Thank you very much, everyone.